My name is Mike, and this is Resident Evil. I mean, the bored cyborg. Today I'm gonna do something very different for the channel, something that I hope you all enjoy. I'm going to do my first video game review or discussion or whatever you want to call it. I'd love to know what your experiences have been with the Resident Evil franchise in general, so feel free to leave that in the comments below and we could get a little discussion rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Ah! You guys are probably starting to learn that I am a huge video game fan. Mostly retro video games, but I love all video games. I grew up with them, obviously. I'm equally as passionate about video games as I am about film, and I really want to infuse some video game videos into my channel. I hope you guys enjoy them. I figure this is a perfect sort of opportunity to do that, because today I'm talking about the Resident Evil 2 remake. I'm also going to be talking about the original Resident Evil 2 and kind of comparing them a little bit and just kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of it. So here are the two games that I'll be talking about, but I do want to talk about my history and my nostalgia for the Resident Evil franchise. Back in 96 or 97, I can't quite remember, I was over a good friend of mine's, Justin's house. And Justin and I, we used to play a lot of video games together, a lot of sports games. I had other friends that I played, the non-sports games with. But Justin and I usually played sports games. But one day I went over his house and his father had just picked up Resident Evil. And we sat down, we were like, yeah, we played some game day or whatever it was, 98 at the time. And then we threw in Resident Evil. We knew nothing about it. We knew it was going to be scary. We knew it was going to be a horror sort of thing just based on the cover. We turn it on, and we're immediately ingrained. We're scared. Justin's got the controller. I'm like, bro, this is your house. This is your game. I'm goody. In fact, we weren't supposed to be playing it. As far back as I could remember, his father was at work, so we were like after school, a couple hours before his father gets home, and we weren't supposed to be playing it, so we were playing it. And I remember this moment so distinctly. We were walking down a hallway, a very quiet hallway. Most of you probably know where this is going. And all of a sudden, crash! Through the window comes a fucking zombie dog. And I remember being so scared. I had never been so scared by a video game. I jumped, flew back. Justin jumped too. I noticed him jump, but he kept his composure. He put the controller down on the ground nicely, got up, walked over calmly to the PlayStation, and hit the power button. And he's like, I'm done with this. And I was like, sounds good to me. We threw on NBA Live or something, and we were good to go. That was my first exposure to Resident Evil. The next time I played a Resident Evil game was Resident Evil 2 in 98, or 98, 99. And it blew me away. I was so scared. I didn't beat the game when I was younger. I didn't beat it until a few years later when a good buddy of mine, Dom, who was a big fan of the series, was excellent at these games, and he could navigate them really well, and he kind of showed me the ropes. That was the first time I beat Resident Evil 2, but I did play it when it came out, and I loved it. I loved the world. I loved the tank controls. I loved how confined you felt, how much you had to conserve your ammo. I'm coming off of games like Contra 3 and, just run and gun sort of types of games. Resident Evil was really the first of its kind, and 2 perfected the genre. That jumps forward. Of course, I played all the Resident Evil games in between, and I love them all for different reasons. 6 I've yet to play. 7 I just played last year and absolutely adored it. And then comes along Resident Evil 2, the remake. Or I guess it's called Resident Evil 2 Remake. I don't know. Resident Evil 2. We're just going to call it that. It is the remake of the original game. And how did they do with the remake? Oh my god, guys. They nailed it on the head. This at once feels like a remake, but it also feels like a new Resident Evil game. They've refined the mechanics. They've also brought it back to its essence, which is phenomenal. We've got save rooms. We've got typewriters, of course, to save the games. Unfortunately, we don't have ink ribbons. Back in the old games, there were a finite amount of ink ribbons scattered, hidden throughout the house that you had to find in order to save the game. This one, you could save whenever you find a safe room. And to be honest, it auto-saves anyway, so it's not quite as confined, and I understand it's catering towards modern gamers as well as old school, but it strikes a really good balance. And, of course, you have item management, which is always an integral part of the Resident Evil franchise. I love it. I love micromanaging and setting up my inventory how I want it, that whatever best suits me and helps me achieve my goals quicker. The graphics are phenomenal. One of the best looking, between this and Resident Evil 7, some of the best looking Resident Evil games thus far. Of course, the voice acting leaves some to be desired. The story, they fleshed out the story. In fact, you guys all know that truck in the beginning of Resident Evil 2 that's on fire, and you have to escape from the zombies. That's all still here, but what they actually do with the cinematics is they show the truck driver, like eating, this fat American truck driver with a trucker hat and everything. He's eating like a cheeseburger, and he's, very careless, obviously. And it shows how he ends up. It turns out that that truck driver is the truck that we see in the very first sequence of the game when we gain control of Claire or Leon. So it was really cool, sort of little things they do to flesh out the world, flesh out the story, and the world does feel lived in. It feels larger than it did in the original game. And I'm not saying anything negative about the original game here, because it is one of my favorite games of all time. It is a masterpiece. It is a 5 out of 5. But so is this. The sound design. The sound design is always great in these games and Silent Hill games. Survival horror, they really are dependent on sound design, and it makes sense because you really have to listen for social cues, for audio cues. Basically, you shoot a zombie in the head a couple times, they fall to the ground, and then you go up and start slashing the zombie to kill him or shoot him in the head more. There's a very distinct, squish sound that happens to let the player know that the zombie is actually dead. Now, that's like the only nitpick I have about this game is there are zombies that take 5 to 10 headshots to kill. And maybe I'm not hitting it in the exact right spots, but I'm shooting them in the head, in the face area 5 to 10 times, and they're not dying. What I do like is sometimes they'll fall and play dead, and then when you walk past them, they grab you. That's really cool. But the zombies don't die. They should be a little bit easier to kill. I hate to sound that way, but it's just and there's plenty of ammo scattered throughout, so maybe it's really not much of a complaint. I'm sure they were aware of it, but they gave you enough ammo to compensate. And it's all about conserving your ammo, of course, conserving your first aids, because there are a finite amount of those in the game. Another thing that this game does, it brings back Mr. X, and oh my god, is he one of the scariest things in any game I've ever played. Ever. Just, he's one of the scariest entities in any game I've ever played. The first time you see him, he moves this big downed helicopter out of the way, and he just starts for you. It is a fucking beeline. He is not messing around. He goes through doors. He climbs ladders. He busts through walls. He doesn't play around. And he will get you, and he will destroy you. The sound cues really come into play here because there is a very slight, very vague musical sort of thing that accompanies Mr. X's presence. And there's also footsteps. You hear him out there. You hear him coming for you. And the only place you're safe is in safe rooms. And you gotta run to the nearest safe room, wait it out. Once you hear the footsteps dissipate, go back out and be cautious. There's a very large, there's a part of the game where you have to be on your toes because he could come out at any time. And they really play with this. They play with your mind because you're not safe. During the first half of the game, you're relatively safe, even though that zombies sort of, there are new zombie spawning points, which always keeps it fresh and interesting. But Mr. X can appear at any time, any moment. He's always looming over your shoulder, it seems. And it is tense, and it is scary. It is survival fucking horror to the core. The combat mechanics are very classic Resident Evil. Of course, there's no more tank controls, but we do have the quick turn, back in circle, quick turn around so that you can move in and out of the situation you're in more easily. Of course, there's L2, R2 to shoot. You've got your sub weapon, either a grenade or a knife, which definitely come in handy. Everything comes in handy in this game. The puzzle solving is still there. There are some really cool and unique puzzles that they do, sort of playing on the ideas that they had in 7, where you have like a box and you got to examine the box. You got to find the little area to open the box, and you hit X and it opens up the box and there's something inside of it. A lot of really cool little puzzles that are never too challenging. They don't hang you up for too long. You could figure it out if you logic your way through it, reason your way through it. So really love all the mechanics of the game. I can't complain. They're just building, continuously, consistently building upon the original engine. Biohazard, Resident Evil 7 did the first person thing. This pulls it back to third person, which I do prefer, I think. You can also mess with your field of view in the options and how close you are to the character and all the sensitivity. It's very user, you can manipulate it. You can manipulate the controls to best suit your playing. So I loved all of that. It's got multiple difficulty levels, of course. I usually start on normal and then next time I play, I bump it up a little bit. Another thing that's really cool about Resident Evil 2 Remake is it has these challenges, these little side stories set within the same universe at the same time. Little side stories that flesh out the main story, and they're their own little challenges, and they're more action-oriented. So they're rated by difficulty. So the one that I'm working my way through now is number 2. And they're designed so that you have to, or is it 2-star one, I should say. They're designed so that you have to play it over and over again to learn what to do. Sort of like an old school NES game or an SNES game or a modern retro platformer where you're getting your ass handed to you, but you're learning. And it's rewarding every time you get a little bit further. So the challenges in this game are excellent. There's enough fluff to really make this feel like a complete $60 game, a complete package. It also has unlockables, so the further you get in the game, the more you unlock like 3D models of the characters, of the weapons, of the items, and you can examine them up close. It's really cool. And it also has just little story elements that you can unlock and just really fleshes out the world of Resident Evil 2. The music is excellent. It's got hues and cues from the original game. From what I understand, there's an update or something, like a downloadable content thing where you could basically impart upon the game the original score and soundtrack, which is awesome. I'd love to do that the next time I play through it. As you could tell, guys, Resident Evil 2 expands upon the first game in terms of mythology and more playtime. There's more to do. There are new areas to the police precinct. And it is just such a wonderful remake. I still prefer the original. The original just nostalgically... I don't even want to use the word prefer. They're two different things, but they're the same in essence. Two different eras, I'll say. Eras of gaming. And man, Capcom is just knocking it out of the park recently with Mega Man 11 and now Resident Evil 2 Remake. I know their next Resident Evil game is going to be just as phenomenal, if not more. And I can't wait for it. I am a die-hard fan of this series, and I wanted to come in here today and talk to you guys about Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 the remake as my first video game discussion / review on the channel. I think it was a good opportunity for me to talk about a game that I've been playing and have been having so much fun with. So if you're a fan of the franchise or not, check this out. If you want to have the shit scared out of you, this is the game to play. It is so good. It's so tense. It's Resident Evil 2, baby. The remake. I just wanted to thank you guys for checking out my first video game review. I was so excited to get on here today and start talking about video games with you guys. I know I've been sort of putting in a little bit here and there, especially in my Digging in the Crates videos in terms of video games, but I'm so passionate about games. I've been playing them since I could hold a controller. I have pictures of me as a 2- and 3-year-old playing the Sega Genesis, and the hobby means a lot to me. Like I said, I'm just as passionate about gaming as I am about horror and about film in general. I had to do a video on Resident Evil 2, and I'm just excited that I'm playing it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd love to know what your favorite Resident Evil game is, or if you've played Resident Evil 2 or its remake, and what you feel about it. So feel free to leave that in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos like this, please feel free to hit the subscribe button, as well as the little bell for notifications. Anyway, guys, I will see you next time. Bored Cyborg, out. Question, is this guy from Killer Clowns from Outer Space? I can't quite tell what they were going for. I mean, it kind of looks like one of the Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but I mean, it has to be, because I've got Freddy, I've got all these other characters that are distinct, but I don't know. Help me.